too if Camp got on.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll turn my phone off.
Hey, Jonathan, could you mute your mic?
Are you ready to go? Let us call our meeting to order. And we have enough people for a quorum, is that correct?
This meeting is being recorded and/or transcribed.
Okay. I assume everybody has the agenda and had the opportunity to look at it. Is there any changes or corrections or anything you want to say about it? If not, I would like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anybody need to discuss anything? Nays? Aye, the agenda has been approved. The minutes, I assume everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
Not for me.
Anybody online have any corrections to the minutes?
No.
All right, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Virginia, you want a second?
I can second.
Virginia seconds. Any discussion? Then the minutes will be approved. Our first case is case number 608. And who do we have to present?
Madam Chairman, did you want to vote on those minutes?
I thought I did.
You just said they were approved. You didn't vote.
We didn't have any nays.
Okay. All right. Making sure we don't have to come back later.
All right, for case number 608, who do we have to present for that?
So I'll present the staff report and then Edie will come up.
That'd be great.
Okay. Case number 608 is regarding 1206 South 16th Street. You'll recall that we heard this application at the January 21st, 2021 meeting. At that time, the case was tabled. The applicant requested to come back before the HPC for review of the design of the proposed new buildings before they go before the Planning Commission for a variance to actually build the buildings. So the commission will consider and vote on the design of the proposed new buildings and site changes today, and if that vote is in favor, the project will move on to the Planning Commission for hearing on the use of the site as a residential common interest development. The applicant proposes 2 3-bedroom residential units on the existing lot. Additionally, the existing shed, which you guys can see to the left of the contributing resource there, would be removed. No changes are proposed to the existing building that fronts South 16th Street. The new 2-story buildings will sit on the rear portion of the lot, and due to the topography and grade of the lot, they will not be highly visible from the street. Other proposed changes to the site include a new drive with parking and a deck connecting the 2 buildings. The proposed new buildings are set back from the existing contributing building, and the construction of the new buildings will not affect the pattern or rhythm of solid and void on the street. The materials are compatible with the requirements of the design guidelines. and the buildings are 38 feet at their highest, which meets the requirements of the Conservation Overlay District. Staff finds that the design of the proposed new buildings is consistent with the recommendations of the Oxford Design Guidelines. So I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, or we can have Edie come up to present.
Kate, I have a question. This is Camp.
Yep.
Hey, can you give us a little more information on why the applicant decided to come to us before going before the Planning Commission? Because I believe that's one thing we had hoped that they would do to be consistent with some of the others that have done so in the past.
I don't have any insight on why they've chosen to do so, but that they have the right to submit an application and be heard at the public meeting.
Yeah, I understand that they have the right. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning, I believe we had a discussion at the last meeting that we had hoped that they would go before the Planning Commission, so I was thinking there might have been a particular reason they chose not to.
Hey, Camp, it's Ben. The applicant has representatives here. I'll let them speak to their intent. We often end up in a chicken and the egg type of a situation when it comes to these matters, and often what we have found is that the conversations that take place here can actually dictate the design that goes forward to the Planning Commission, which typically seals the process of this is what the that they're approved to do. So when their request comes forward, it's exactly as such. And so we don't know exactly what this commission might say about the design, the aesthetics, whether it complies with the design guidelines, any other materials that might change or could potentially change the nature of the request that would go before the Planning Commission. I think that might be why they move forward with that. I see a lot of heads moving, but Edie can speak to it, and I've seen it time and time again. So I'll let Edie get up here and present, but that's where we are from a staff level.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ben.
And Edie, for the record, would you state your name?
Yes, this is Edie Conkerton, and I am here as the architect. Camp, just a little bit clarification. Last time we did not really discuss at all the building design, and I wanted to get your feedback on that. I think it's appropriate for the area, and I know the city agrees as well, but we got sidetracked as to the number of units, the actual development, and in this presentation that we have this time, we have our full submittal that will be going to the Planning Commission.
Yes. Thank you, Edie, for that. And, I think one of the reasons that I know that I was wondering about it is I believe that to have these two multifamily structures in a single-family neighborhood is part of a new thing before the Planning Commission. Is that not correct, Ben and Kate? In order to be able to subdivide this property and to put these multifamily units in here, would be passed under a new. I can't remember what the term is called. You guys have used it before.
It's a common. They're calling it something new now. It's a common interest development. But if you look at part of our presentation, you can see that this already exists up and down the street.
You're speaking to multifamily?
Yes.
Okay.
Multifamily, multi-unit.
Okay.
And we have a map of that. I don't know exactly what page it would be in your submittals, but we have a map to show that there's a good bit of it already in the neighborhood, and that's just on South 16th Street. And then as you go down the two side streets, there's more as well. But we're here, camp today, we're here as much to hear about the building itself or the structures themselves that we're proposing.
I understand what our role is, and I understand what you're here for. It's just a little bit awkward when we don't have a clear-cut process, when you're coming in and asking to put multifamily units in a single-family area, in which you have an historic property on that piece of land. And so maybe the process needs to be further defined so that we don't have this chicken and egg kind of situation like Ben's referring to. I think that's a little bit of my concern, is that we're being asked to rule on the design of something that has not been even approved for you to do by the Planning Commission. It's just a little awkward, I think.
Camp, can you hear me?
Great, Camp.
Yes.
A couple things that I'd like to address. What they're requesting is not multifamily. What they're requesting are three, I think it's, well, I guess it would be a total of 3 single-family homes on one property.
Yes.
1, 2, and then the existing one. That's not uncommon. As Edie pointed out, the mechanism that allowed for that was a condominium. There are plenty of condominiums that have been developed in concert with the Land Development Code for years in Oxford. We changed the name because when somebody hears a condominium, they think of the big tall thing that you see on Gulf Shores that's looks like a multifamily structure, but there are plenty of single-family developments that have you know, individual ownership mechanisms or rental mechanisms that exist. And so what they're proposing is certainly allowed. It's allowed by special exception, you know, so that way we can take into consideration the context of the neighborhood, the existing neighborhood, how it's changing over time. We can also look at, you know, a whole host of information like covenants and things like that, which we do require as part of that special exception request. And as I mentioned, this has existed for quite some time, so this is not a new request. We just call it something new, and it is new that it is required in a historic district to seek a special exception.
Yes, and thank you, Ben. And so I guess my using the term multifamily is incorrect, even though it is fairly clear that the 2 new units will be built to be rented out for bedrooms to be used by students and that kind of thing. So in essence, they really are multifamily, even though I understand the specific term is not multifamily.
Well, the 2 units can be either purchased or purchased and rented, but it's not exclusive to students.
I understand that. It would be highly unusual for anyone to be interested in purchasing a property that was designed to have bedrooms that are to be used by non-family members, it seems, and the way that this is being designed, 2 different units with 6 bedrooms. I mean, I think we should call it what it is and not try to beat around the bush here.
Well, I would call it just as easily game day rental, or, you know, I mean, there's no reason why a family could not use this.
Right. And Ben, I hear you on condominiums, but I'm not so sure that I can recall too many times that we've approved the building of a multi-bedroom condominium on a single-family lot that holds an historic structure. I don't know that we've had much experience with that.
2 that come to mind, Camp, would be Kennedy Cove and Shaw Place.
Shaw came to my mind.
Kennedy Cove, they're single-family homes. They're not condominiums.
That's the ownership mechanism is a condominium. It's just like this would be.
Condominium is defined by ownership mechanism.
That's right.
Not I mean, that's the way we're using the term. I mean, that's the way the city uses the term.
I don't see that similar at all. I'm sorry.
Don't either.
I don't
And
think
I understand, you guys are kind of, I don't know, hiding behind the language. Let's just speak the truth about what the intent is here. This is not the Shaw Place. We know that.
No, it's not.
I mean, you think the same
It would
kind of
never
vibe?
be the Shaw Place. It happens to have an old historic home in front.
Are they going to be sold separately? All three structures on the property, are they going to be sold separately?
Brian? They can be. This is
Are
a
they
legal
surveyed
term.
as individual lots? Are they surveyed as individual lots?
No, it's one piece of
You-
property, it's one parcel, it's not, I don't even think it's in an existing subdivision.
No.
Is it in an existing subdivision? It's a parcel. Yeah,
It's a
it's just it's a singular parcel that will have 3 structures on it, and the ownership mechanism would be a residential common interest development.
So you could have 3 different owners there, is that correct?
You could.
Okay, all right.
Does
I
any,
just wanted to get some things clear about what we're doing here in our role, or what we are being a part of, if the Planning Commission also approves. That's all.
Ben, this is the issue I have. I just don't think as an historical preservation commission, we have to be restricted on the individual building themselves without addressing things like density of the neighborhood. I think that affects preservation, historic preservation.
I think your
And I
charter.
was riding up and down that street, South 16th today, and to be honest with you, it's a mess.
yeah,
It's a total mess up and down that street.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I just don't think more, basically, multifamily, I agree with Cam, should be added right there in the middle of that street.
Hey, Lance, it's Kate.
Yeah.
I totally understand your concern, and I think I wasn't here at the time that the Shaw House was subdivided, but that's kind of what we dealt with there. And with Cedar Bend, you're talking about how will new development affect existing historic buildings on, throughout town. I think in this instance, the new buildings don't really affect our sight lines to the historic building. It's not a historic estate property that has, several outbuildings that could be affected by the placement of new buildings on the site. And so to me, this is an example of a time where you can allow for more density without affecting, which the city needs, without affecting our historic properties. But I understand if you feel differently. But when I see an application for multiple buildings on a historic site, what I'm looking for, based on the Secretary of the Interior standards, is how is it going to affect the existing historic resource? And in my opinion, this doesn't have a negative effect on them. Does that make sense?
Well, to be honest, not really, because, you're saying what the city needs. Well, I didn't understand what you meant by that. You said something.
Well, I guess we're not impeding density here.
But why?
Okay, okay, go ahead, Lance.
I think too much density is a bad thing. I served on the 1997 2020 vision for Oxford, and in that it was a citywide project, and in that there was discussion and concern. This was 1997 now, concern over density in Oxford. And back then, that doesn't even compare to what we have right now, with people building on top of each other.
Well, Lance, I understand what you're saying, but you have an applicant that's here tonight to request a certificate of appropriateness on the design of 2 new structures, and then improvements to the primary structure. So that's what they're, to the site, all right. Like paint, right?
No, they haven't proposed.
Okay. So two new structures.
Hey, Ben?
Sir?
I think that's one of the points that it is affecting the site. The new plan is building driveways all around the existing historic site there, right? There's new pavement all around it. It's drastically affecting that property, the surrounding property of the historic, of the structure on the property. Is it not? Is not the site plan proposing pretty drastic changes to the site?
It's proposing 2 driveways, yes.
Yes. So, to what Kate was saying, this is affecting, even though they're not outbuildings, this site will no longer be recognizable as it once was.
It's going to be better.
Jeff is coming along.
And
Hey, this is Jeff Williams of Williams Engineering. I'm in charge of the site design. As to the 2 driveways that you see with the new development, there are currently 2 driveways at these locations now. Yes, they're being improved to be much better than they are, but just want to make clear that we're not adding to, we're just improving to.
And you're also moving off a shed that's an eyesore.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And,
but aren't you adding a number of parking places on the site?
and we're landscaping the property so that, I think from the street it's going to be much nicer.
And that landscaping includes trees, right? Not just shrubberies?
That's correct. That was a professional landscape architect that provided the landscape for the whole site.
2 questions on that. Just clarifying that the landscape plan, I think, denotes that the 2 large oak trees in front are not going anywhere. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then if you'll look at that landscaping plan, you've got 3 parking places on the side. If you go back to the site plan, you got 6 parking places on the side. Now, which one is it?
It's going to be that.
Okay.
Yeah, the other one was
Can't see what you're referring to.
in before we came to that.
Okay.
So if you look at the existing site the way it is, those parking places that are on the site design from the engineering plans, it's replacing an old dilapidated garage or carport or whatever you want to call it. So again, it's just, I think, an improvement to the site rather than a hindrance to be taken away from the historical significance of the original structure.
And that street is mostly rental.
Yes, ma'am. I think the map pretty much clarifies it. I'm not as familiar with it as they are, but great if you put that one. I don't know what the number is, but you can see that the majority of those are the same type of situation we're trying to have here.
Well, I agree that this plan is gonna change the property, but that shed certainly isn't tugging at my heartstrings, and the density issue cited by some of my co-commissioners, I think is somewhat solved by the existence of parking within the lot as opposed to everyone parking on the street. And I also hear a fear that there may be more students living as opposed to single families, and those just aren't concerns that I share right now. I feel like if they need to tear down the shed to put in some parking and improve the property, and I think that the big changes that are made are appropriate changes for any landowner to consider and make as his or her investment plan dictates. I'm just not seeing I don't see this as a doom and gloom moment for historic preservation on that street. Those are my main concerns, and I plan to support the application, particularly the limited. I understand that we're here on a limited capacity to approve design. The Planning Commission can decide whether everything else is approved. Is that right, you guys?
The design of the site and the new buildings.
Right.
Does anyone have questions for the architect about the proposed new buildings?
No, and I am very impressed, with the site that the houses will go on because they are completely unseen from the street. That drops down 20 feet or more. I mean, it's a big drop. So, you know, the fact that those homes are back, tucked in behind something that we would hope at some point that original house gets restored.
As an architect, I mean, yes.
But that, to me, will never take away from that house because it's unseen.
Have there been any points or any conversation with neighbors on Beanland? It does get kind of close to those houses back there. Just curious. Okay.
We've not heard anything from.
We might want to see if anyone in the gallery is here to speak.
Is there anyone that, in the audience, that happens to be a neighbor or concerned about what is being presented at this moment? No one?
I'm a neighbor. I live on the end of Johnson and South 16th.
And what is your name?
Jolie.
Oh,
Nichols. And sadly, I have to say that I don't think it makes a difference if we have an issue with a multifamily home or not. The street in front of my house is it's full of college students. It's all rentals. I think I may know one person, except on the end of the cul-de-sac. There's a few families on that end, but I think I may know one person on the street that actually owns a home. If that helps anybody.
How do you feel about more students?
Unfortunately, I don't think I can do anything about it. I hope to be one of the people that would turn our neighborhood over, but without getting into a whole nother conversation, I think it's hard for families to afford to live in town right now.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I want to absolutely
to live in town.
Second what Jolie is saying there, and also responding to Jacob. For me, it's not a concern about students. If anybody knows me, they know that I'm a strong advocate on behalf of students in this community. I teach them and mentor them regularly. It has nothing to do with students. It has to do with it being rental and increasing the density and the appropriateness of it on a single-family historic lot. I'll champion students any day.
Oh, I understand that, Camp. I didn't mean to suggest you didn't like students. Yeah. I may have been making an assumption, but it seemed to me that I heard some concern that it's just going to be a bunch more students running loose in a historic district. But I'm sorry if I misconstrued your concerns.
That's okay.
Camp. I understand.
I just wanted to be clear on the record. Yeah. There. Yeah.
Are there any other discussions or concerns about this?
I think, Edie, your initial statement to us was that you wanted to see if it was aesthetically pleasing, if
it met with your, yeah.
And what I love about that historical property is that it does look like an old farmhouse to me. You know,
yes.
And I think that you have replicated that style nicely.
Okay, good. You know,
some of the condos aren't in that area, just, you know, they seem oversized and practically in the street. And to Diane's point, these are down, they're out of sight, so that's good.
Is there anything else that anyone wants to add to this?
Hey, Diane, may I ask one further question, please?
Of course.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the owner or Edie can say at this time, for the record, that there's no intention of tearing down the existing structure.
Absolutely.
So you're going to go on the record and say that at this time you have no intention?
Yes. Would you like the owner to say it as well?
I would, for the record, please.
The house is going nowhere.
That was Brian Hayden, and he said the house is going nowhere.
Okay, thank you.
I actually think what happened in January was our commission got very concerned about the original homestead on that house.
Yes.
And because of that, I think you're being questioned about what the intentions are for that property.
Yes.
And I hope you understand that it's our concern for the older home more than what you're doing down the hill.
Yes.
So,
And I think that's part of the reason why we came back now, is because we wanted to get at least feedback on what we were doing down the hill.
Does anybody else have anything to add? Camp, do you feel?
Yeah, Ben.
Okay with that?
Yes, thank you.
Ben, a question I have is, does that grade, that the hill, or if you want to call it a hill, a gully, does that run down behind South 16th, those houses that are on the right? Does it run down the back of several of those houses along the street?
Yes, it's a drainage area. It's a drainage area that runs back. Lance, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, you're correct. It is a drainage area that runs back that direction.
Okay, so it's up and down that street, that drainage area.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if this goes through, what would prevent every lot owner from doing this?
I think every property owner has the ability to request anything that the land development code accommodates for. So specifically to answer your question, I don't know that there is a mechanism to prevent anybody from requesting something similar to this in the future.
I will say we looked at a number of the properties, and I don't think there is anything, but the size of this lot is much larger than some of the others. The width, I'll say.
Hey, Ben, can you speak to, how many other historic districts are y'all aware of that are experiencing this same kind of land development changes in order to allow existing historic properties to be subdivided in the historic districts?
Is he asking in Oxford?
Or is this something that was fairly
Oxford or in other communities, Camp?
Say again?
Are you saying in Oxford or in other communities?
No, in other communities. I mean, I don't remember us being aware that this was happening in the historic districts, this new land development code passage. And I'm just wondering how common it is.
Camp, for the record, this could have been requested before. So this has always been able to be done. And we put in added protections, if you recall, to require a special exception to request when located in a historic district, when located in an existing subdivision, and then also when located in the conservation overlay district. So there are added protections inside of this land development code. I can't speak for other communities because it's not a question that I've necessarily asked specific to anybody, but I think any community that is experiencing, that is growing is faced with similar challenges, whether that's through the addition of accessory dwelling units or through additional structures on a property or even the subdivision of property.
I hear you on that. I understand the challenges. I'm just wondering how common it was to historic districts.
Hey, Jeff Williams came up and wanted to point out in your packet, you will see, you've got the map that I think Gray had up earlier that had the different dots that showed homestead and not homestead, and then there was one city-owned piece of property. But if you look at that, it will also indicate in this area the properties that already have multiple structures on them, whether it's a duplex or multiple houses. And then I think the very last sheet, I think it is in the packet, I'm looking, it's not the very last sheet in the packet, but the very last sheet in that sequence that has it has a matrix that shows address, number of residences on the property, and description of properties. And there's 4 of them on there that show 3 residences. There's 2 of them that show 3 residences and 2 that show 2 residences. But Jeff wanted me to point that out, that I think to Lance's point or question a moment ago, that there are other homes on this street that already have that, or other properties on the street that already have multiple structures and multiple homes on them.
Ben, and I promise I'm not trying to sound argumentative here, but if in fact we decided to make our decisions based upon things that happened in the past in Oxford before we were given the privilege of serving and trying to preserve, you know, we couldn't operate that way. I mean, simply because there are things that have happened in the past, that's one of the reasons our commission was formed, to try to stop certain things. So just by taking the premise that there are condos here and there's condos there and that kind of thing, I don't necessarily follow that particular train of thinking for us.
Hey, Cam. I'm just passing on the information that I was just told, so I'm not necessarily taking a position on that, okay? So I'm just communicating what the applicant's representative just shared with me.
Thank you, sir.
And we put that information together, Camp, because of concerns that were voiced at the last meeting.
Do we have any other comments on this before we dwell into what we think we like or dislike on the design of the 2 houses?
Kate and Ben, is there any prohibition in the guidelines or ordinance, either one, that dictates against approval or prohibits approval? Well, if we all wanted to deny this application, what would be the possible basis for denying it?
Yeah, I see what you're asking. There is some language in the design guidelines about site and setting of historic properties, and there's a whole section on that, and that's kind of what I was talking about when we were talking about historic estate, like the Shaw House. I suppose you could make an argument here for that, but I would have to go back and we'd have to go through that section as a commission, but I don't believe that it prohibits this approval, or else I would have put it in your report. It's typically talking about, and even with the Secretary of the Interior standards, we're talking about sightlines to the historic property, blocking access to the historic property, something of that nature, rather than adding an outbuilding, which is done frequently on historic sites.
So
this isn't exactly an outbuilding, but it's a similar.
Okay, so the textual legal argument to be made is not much of an argument after y'all having considered it.
For denial?
Right.
Okay.
Does anyone else have anything to add to this? Camp, are you okay?
Yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate you guys hearing me out on this. Thank you.
We are being asked to vote on the design of the proposed 2 new buildings, which we have not gotten into until right now. I'd like to hear what anybody has to think about the design. We see that they will be have modern, I guess, lines, windows, or you have
windows, yes, windows, yes.
There'll be a fiber cement board and batten style siding, some painted brick veneer. Where would that be?
That's mainly the water table or the wainscot under the buildings. for the foundation.
And I assume because of the plane that it's on.
It's gonna be.
It's gonna be wet.
Yeah, yeah. We just didn't want just plain piers under it.
Does anybody want to discuss the designs, Joel? Virginia?
I think they're fine.
I think I jumped ahead.
Jacob?
I'm good, thanks.
Camp, what are you thinking?
I'm good.
Then I would like a motion on whether to accept or deny the two houses being constructed on this site. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Jacob makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Joel seconds. I think we've had a lot of discussion, but does anybody want to discuss anything else or ask any more questions? Okay, everybody who is for the motion on the floor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Camp?
So we have
Lance.
two. Lance, you're nay?
Lance is mine.
Okay. We have two nays. Anyone abstaining? Then the motion passed.
Thank you all. And Camp, I'm sorry to
No. Hey,
upset you.
Edie, I absolutely respect and your work as an architect. I respect you 100%. Please don't take this personally, okay?
I do not. Thank you all.
Okay.
I just want to say I respect Lance and Camp 100% too, even though we voted separate ways on this one.
Absolutely. The feeling's mutual, Jacob.
Appreciate it, Jake.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, public hearing 616.
Decisions like that.
I need to recuse myself from the next two cases. Thank y'all.
Jonathan, are you on the line?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great, yes.
Great.
All right, so we're going to consider case number 616, which is 1500 Johnson Avenue. You guys can see the building on your screen. It's listed as non-contributing in the South Lamar Historic District. The applicant requests several changes to the existing building. Additions including a front porch and rear additions, and you'll see on those rear additions there's some porch addition and some heated and cooled living space addition, a new carport, a new driveway, replacement of the existing roof, replacement of the existing aluminum windows, replacement of the existing vinyl siding with hardy siding, and to paint the existing brick. We've included the historic survey in your packet. The building is likely constructed around 1965. The proposed additions are in accordance with the recommendations of the design guidelines. One item that I did point out in your report that you guys need to discuss is that the applicant requests to paint the unpainted brick veneer. We've had several discussions about this over the past few years. The Oxford Design Guidelines state that brick and stone that have never been painted should remain unpainted, and commercial sealants or waterproof coatings should not be applied. That's in the historic masonry section of the design guidelines. The new construction section does not have that requirement, and as you guys know, the commission has sometimes approved painted brick for new brick veneer buildings. You know, brick veneer buildings sort of, especially of this era, sort of fall in an in-between. It's in style to paint them currently, and while it doesn't cause the same structural damage that it would for an entirely masonry construction building, there are still maintenance concerns with painting historic brick. So, you know, you guys just need to discuss if it's appropriate for this house and this era. Other than the brick veneer decision, staff does recommend approval of the design. Jonathan did a really nice job of incorporating the existing roof lines and taking elements of the existing building in his additions. So, does anyone have any questions for me or for Jonathan? Or Jonathan, would you like to present anything?
Well, I think you covered it pretty clearly. The one thing I would say, I think, is that the addition on the rear is very modest. It is only 200 square feet of additional space, 204 to be exact. It looks larger if you were just looking at the site plan, but that's really a carport and a screen porch, which, as viewed from the street, is still going to be very open, not very imposing on the streetscape. And the addition to the front, although we're calling it a porch, is really nothing more than a stoop cover, and giving a little bit of height and a better defined entry there. As Kate said, we did try to follow the house from all its cues. Our windows are following the same patterns. We really aren't making any changes to the style of the house. One thing that I'm not sure she mentioned, but is included in the drawings, is we are enclosing the existing garage, which is a basement level garage, which is very close to the street, and replacing it with a new carport that's further off the street in addition. All that's pretty straightforward. I know the elephant in the room is the painting of the brick. And it's a peculiar two-tone brick choice, not very popular today. And someone already started to paint the brick. The front seal of the house from those triple windows is painted white for some reason that no one can explain. It's the only part of it that they ever attempted to paint, I guess. But it's our opinion that the house would be more in keeping with what's happening on the rest of the streets that were painted. I included some examples of houses that are basically all within sight of this house, including one that's 2 doors down. It's the top right picture on the picture page, which is a home of a very similar style. And it's been painted, and I think you'd find it to be attractive in the way that it's been done. So that is what we are requesting.
I rode by the house, and I think you've done a wonderful job with it, Jonathan. As far as the painting goes, I wish that we as a commission did have something more precise in our guidelines, because I feel like one day we might say, paint it, you can paint that, and the next meeting we might tell someone they can't. I'd like for something to be more consistent for us to go by, so that it won't be determined on if we had 1 cup of coffee a day or 2. I know that the guidelines have just been redone, but I wish we could do, they haven't yet?
No, we haven't done anything to the guidelines.
Okay.
So since they were done in the early 2000s.
But we are doing it.
Right now, we're surveying the historic districts. I would like to get to the guidelines, but we're not currently working on it.
Can y'all speak into your mics, please?
Is this something that we could address when you get ready to do that, so we can be
certainly
more consistent in rulings?
I think there are certain things in the guidelines that aren't spelled out, and that's where you guys are meant to decide. I understand your concern. When these guidelines were written, buildings from the 50s and 60s weren't historic at the time. So, we were talking about true old soft brick. I mean, Joel, do you want to weigh in maybe in your expertise?
I don't think it's my own house is that of that era. In fact, it's 10 years older, 1954. I painted the brick 30 years ago. I was like one of the first people to do it, but now I'm kind of, and so I can see both sides of the argument. Believe me, but the older I get, the more I'm inclined to say, if it's an existing structure, do your very best to match the brick. If it is a new structure, paint away.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion.
And that's actually where, when I look back through the archives of commission decisions, that's pretty much where the commission has landed. If it's new, paint away. If it's old, even not necessarily, like I keep talking about the Shaw House today, but not Shaw House old, but it's still from the 50s. You're still creating a future maintenance problem, right? Whether or not it's going to be structurally a problem.
And eventually every house in town is going to have painted brick.
Right.
Every house, and then one day we're going to wake up and go, that doesn't look too good. I wonder if we can take that paint off. I mean, that's what's gonna happen. You know?
It's like the vinyl siding of our
It's
times.
like Harvest Gold refrigerators. It's eventually gonna go up.
I agree with you.
And-
You're speaking my language, man.
I think we need there are different kinds of brick, different quality of bricks. And I drove past this house and, you know, it's a sad kind of salmon, you know, two-tone brick, and I thought painting this would be good. It makes me think of the Renfro house on South 11th Street, sort of the same era. And this is all just aesthetics to me, reaction. As an artist, I love color, and if you're gonna paint it, I don't want Oxford to look like the North Pole, where every house is painted bright white. I think there are other colors, you know, on-trend colors that would look nice, just so, for variety and in a more interesting landscape.
Well, with all due respect, I just think we ought to try anyway. And I realize it can be very difficult to match, and if it is, then let's talk about it. And I think that's where the case-by-case basis comes in, and it's understandable, and that's exactly what may very well happen. But I think to start with, you ought to try. That's just my personal opinion.
So Joel, you're suggesting trying to match the tone of the brick?
Do what?
You're suggesting to, instead of painting it white, to paint it the tone of the brick?
What's painted?
There's a section,
Well, I haven't seen that section. It
do you
hasn't-
have a,
Well, there's two colors of brick on the house already.
Right.
So that's what Blair's referring to.
Well, I didn't notice that in my.
Yeah, it's an original detail, an odd one, but it's.
Well, I mean, I see the band on there. I do see that, but that's no big deal.
Yellow.
Of course.
You know, and I appreciate Ms. Grubb's comment. I do think it would be helpful to everyone if there were clear guidelines which we were all working from. We've had, my client and I, who is in the room, have had lots of conversations about whether or not painting this brick would be something that she would be able to do. But at the end of the day, we fall back to what the actual survey says. And the survey had marked this structure, non-contributing structure. So it was already kind of a throwaway and not being one that was really worthy of the full preservation of the rest of the district. So I then just take a step back, like what really would be best for the street now, not about cohesiveness of the district as defined surveys were done. And I look around at all of the other houses that are there, and those that are painted look much better than this one. So I think we could make this house look better. It's on a prominent corner. It's been recently, there's been a stop sign right in front of it, so people actually have to stop and see it, maybe more than they would in the past. And, you know, we just think it would be better if it were painted. Understanding the issues of maintenance and other things that might happen in the future. But that's something that the client's willing to accept, is the upkeep of the house. Certainly much more so than the previous home.
does anybody else have anything they want to? Camp, Lance, Jolie? Do y'all have?
Questions about the design aside from the painted brick? Okay.
I think the paint was the main thing.
Hey, Kate, are y'all putting this up? I can't see anything on the screen. It's not coming up where I can see it. I don't know. Jolie, can you see it? Anything?
I can't either. I can only see Camp and Jolie.
Yeah, we haven't been able to see the things you're saying that you're putting up on the screen.
Can you need this back?
Should I share my screen? Michael, can I share my screen? That'll work. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen and we'll see if you guys can see.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. And Camper, you wanted to see photos of the house?
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, that's not what I meant to do. Hang on a second. I think Teams is pretty much back working, so we'll hope that this works. Okay.
There you go.
Camp, can you see Kate's screen?
Yes, thank you, that's
Great.
All right, so are there any discussions on what Jonathan is proposing with this house? And any other discussion on painting or not painting the house? Lance, do you have anything?
Jonathan, can you point out where the white painted brick is you're speaking of?
It's in the upper left picture, the front elevation. You see the three windows to the left of the front door?
Yeah.
See that sill, which is, that's painted. I don't know why it's painted white. And there's actually, if you go to the window to the right of the door, Kate, and up a little bit, those aren't the original shutters, obviously. And you can see where maybe the shutters were painted on the house before, and they got paint on the brick. So around those faded blue shutters, there's a ghosting of a white shutter outline as well.
Okay.
And this brick is that very heavily ribbed brick in the front. So, cleaning that sort of stuff off really isn't very realistic.
Yeah. And so I guess I didn't think that was brick under that seal there, but it is, huh?
It's brick. And then you notice right kind of waist high to the right of the front door, that's a band of yellow brick. I see that now, yeah. Which is much uglier than it looks like in the picture. Sorry, Molly.
Very creative, very creative. I guess from my perspective again, and I really do, I agree with everyone who says that we really need to clarify our ordinance because, I respect Jacob so much because he keeps us trying to stick with the law of what we are voting based upon what regulations. And if we were to do that in this case, our regulation says that we should not approve painted brick. So, we get into these situations that sometimes we're saying, well, we're going to vote this way because we feel like we have to, and other times we get to use our discretion.
But might I remind you, Kent, this is also a non-contributing structure. I think
right.
Paint really referring to contributing structures.
Yeah. And I do have a question about, and we don't have time to discuss it now, but would it be contributing now if we did a new survey? In other words, because of its age, would it now be contributing? And I think I've posed that question before for houses that were built in the 50s and 60s, and when our original survey was done, they were not contributing, but maybe they would be now because of advanced age. It's just a question that I think, again, we're going to have to decide at some point.
No, it's okay.
This is Lance.
Hey, Lance, before you speak, let me say one thing. I'm sorry, Kate was asking me a question, so there was a delayed pause. We can certainly look at the design guidelines and trying to provide some clarity as it pertains to painted brick. But I think it's going to be a lot more, I don't know that it's going to be as clear as you all hope it to be. I think we're going to be, we could potentially be right where we're at right now, where it's going to require y'all to look at a case-by-case basis and have to weigh the facts, have to weigh whether it's a contributing structure, if it's new construction. There's going to be a variety of factors that are going to weigh in on this. We absolutely can take a look at that, and I just don't know that it's going to be as clear as we would like for it to be. I guess that's all I can say at this moment.
Yeah, and I get that, and I know too that aesthetically speaking, today in 2021, generally we prefer painted brick. It looks more expensive. Okay. However, in 1955 or 1960, this looked the way it was supposed to look. And so, if we see somebody wearing bell bottoms on the street right now, we go, hey, that's kind of weird, right? but at a particular time, that was the look. And so we're in historic preservation. And so are we in fact trying to preserve way things were intended to look at one time, or are we in the business of trying to make them look better and more expensive? It's a difficult call, I know.
Okay, I don't know that we're gonna solve this question right now. I don't think, our guidelines are set for us to do that. Lance, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say, I just remember in past cases where we looked at whether the structure itself was contributing or non-contributing to see whether or not we would allow painting the brick. I remember a home on Lincoln that was non-contributing house, a ranch-style house over there, and we allowed them to paint the brick. I just, you know, right or wrong, I mean, I think we ought to be consistent.
I think that's a good point,
Very
Lance.
good point. Very good point. So, looking at what is being asked of us right now, the changes to the existing house would be the garage adding a carport. Is that correct, Jonathan? And changing
that's right.
the front of the house to have more of a front porch, a little bit larger. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so does anyone have anything to say about those items that are being asked of us under this COA? So I would like to have a motion on the floor approving these, and then we'll address the paint. Is there anyone in the audience that are neighbors that have a problem with this house? Anyone online or anything? Okay. Thank you. I think we'll do it in two parts. I think I'd feel better about that. Let us address the changes that Jonathan has proposed. Is there a motion to accept the changes to this house with the carport, the front stoop, closing in the garage?
So moved.
All right, everyone, any discussion? Everyone in favor signify by saying yay.
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 Any of those opposed, say nay. And no one's abstaining? Okay, then the motion carries. Now let's discuss the painting of the brick. We've discussed it. Does anybody want to make a motion one way or the other to either approve the painting of the brick or to not paint the brick? Do I have a motion?
I'm sorry to prolong things, I just want to make a comment for the record. Camp made a good point about following the guidelines, and I think our hands are most tied in the cases of demolition. There's a lot of prohibitory language in that as I read that ordinance. In the prior case, as I understood it, there just wasn't much anything to really even suggest denying it in the guidelines, and Camp makes a good point. This says bricks and stone that have never been painted should remain unpainted. And I think that does give a legitimate basis to deny it, but nor is it a mandate that we deny the painting of the brick. So I do think it would be, I hope I'm not getting myself into a, oh, well, there you go. Diane just pointed out that it's even less prohibitory than I thought if I had kept reading. So I plan to support it, and unless there are other comments, I'm ready to make a motion on the paint.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the paint.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All right, everyone in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying yay.
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 Any of those opposed signify by saying nay. Does anyone abstain? Then the motion passes. Okay, then our next hearing will be case number 617, Richard and Jane Cross.
Okay, so we're going to be discussing several changes at 308 North 16th Street. That's the lot that is located directly behind the Shaw House. A new single-family home was approved on this lot at the January 21st, 2021 meeting of this commission. You'll recall that that lot is accessed from a private drive off of North 16th Street, if you're trying to orient yourself. The application features several requests. We've broken it down into two sections for discussion. The first one is the demolition of the existing barn, which you all discussed on a complimentary review basis at that January meeting. The existing barn on this property was once a part of the Shaw House property, though it has now been subdivided from that house and sits on the applicant's lot. It's one of 3 outbuildings and was the last extant outbuilding related to the Shaw House. I included that report from the Mississippi Department of Archives and History's visit to the site in 2014 that we discussed at our last meeting. The commission seemed generally supportive of the request to demolish the barn due to its condition for safety reasons, and also because of the loss of significance of the barn due to its subdivision from the Shaw House. So first, you guys are going to vote on the demolition of the barn, and I've included the criteria for demolition from section 5427 of the code. The commission shall consider the individual architectural, cultural, and/or historical significance of the resource. The commission shall consider the importance or contribution of the resource to the architectural character of the district. The commission shall consider the importance or contribution of the resource to neighboring property values. The commission shall consider the difficulty or impossibility to reproducing such a resource because of its texture, design, material, or detail. So you guys are going to vote on that. And then you're going to discuss the new carport, pool, decking, and fencing. Staff found that the proposed new carport and addition of a pool is acceptable under the design guidelines. The carport's simple in form, it's subordinate to the main house, and it has similar material and detailing to the house or that complements the house. The fencing, the applicant proposed two different styles of fencing. So there's a vinyl coated chain link that goes through sort of like the most wooded area of the house. It's not going to be visible from the street, and that is allowable in the design guidelines. There is a little portion that discusses the use of chain link in non-visible areas. It's such a large lot. I think the applicant is trying to sort of be able to encompass their whole property. The other fencing that will be in the more visible areas is a vertical board wood fence with brick piers. That's actually not recommended in the design guidelines. I included the entire quote in your packet, but it says inappropriate for historic houses are fences constructed of vertical brick piers that are spanned by vertical boards or panels of wrought iron, and it also recommends against combined materials and fencing, including brick, because it's a more modern treatment for fencing. So staff recommends that the entire sections of these portions of fencing that are not chain link be completely wood, not brick and wood. So that's where we landed on a staff recommendation. Does anyone have any questions for me about that? Okay, Jonathan, is there anything you'd like to add?
On the demolition of the barn, I think we had a good and lengthy conversation about that at our complimentary review, so no, I wouldn't add anything to that. Do we want to deal with that before moving on to conversation with the other components?
Okay, I couldn't hear that.
He asked if you guys would like to go ahead and vote about the barn and then move on.
I think we would, because that was the first section. With the demolition of the barn, I'd like to hear any discussion. I think we did talk about this in January. I have the minutes from there, but does anyone Is anyone opposed to the tearing down of this barn? I'd like a motion on the floor then for the demolition of the barn.
I make a motion for demolition of the barn with the assumption, or with the, I think we went through all these factors previously, did we not? Okay, I just would adopt those by reference into the record today, I guess. And assuming that's appropriate, then I would make a motion to approve the demolition. I hadn't thought about that, Ben. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Is my motion subject to approval of a subsequent design? What would you recommend?
It's not primary residence, so it's not maybe necessary here, but that's something that
Yeah.
it's kind of a standard operating procedure in that instance. So I don't know.
So should we consider that now then?
Normally with the demolition, don't we have to landscape if there's going to be a building back in place?
If all I'm saying is if the commission's not agreeable to the design or whatever's going to go back there, then you would have approved them to demolish the building, and it just goes away. So I just want you to be aware of that.
And is there anything that does not concern me unless you tell me something I should be?
There's reason to be a concern. I just want to make sure that
Okay. Okay, well, it did not occur to me to Kate, go ahead.
I think what Ben is saying is that the proposed new pool is where the existing barn is. So unless you make your motion contingent on the building of that pool, the barn will be removed with nothing to be built in its place. I don't think he's
Gotcha.
saying that it is a problem. He's just pointing it out for
Got you. Okay.
the record.
Yeah, I guess I'm just going to make a motion to approve the demolition, assuming that we can adopt the fact that we have considered these 4 factors previously, because that is a command in the ordinance that we shall consider it. We're not considering it here today because we've already done it. So I would incorporate those, adopt them by reference, and make a motion to approve the demolition without any other contingencies.
In reference to Kate.
In reference to whatever is going to be put in its place.
Second on this motion. Joel has a second. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, then all those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Any of those opposed, say nay. Anybody abstaining? There's no one in the audience. So the motion passes. All right, so now we go to, I'm having to share screens because mine's not picking up any Wi-Fi.
You may recall that when we met to review the main house, I talked to you then about the fact we'd be coming back before you to talk about a detached garage. At that time, because we were unsure about the future of the barn, we couldn't really complete our thoughts on where the carport should be and how it should function and how we could accommodate the pool that's always been a desire for the owner. So now I think we understand the best places for those things without the barn being in the way. And the only comment I'll make about the fence, I understand the guidelines discuss not mixing up the materials. That fence, because it's separating that this property's south property line with the north property line of the Shaw Place, is over 300 feet long. In fact, it might even be closer to 350 feet long. That's just a pretty long, straight fence. And so our thought, and particularly the client's thought, was that that added some break in all of that, and it was a detail that picked up the fencing that is elsewhere on the Shaw Place, which has been approved by this commission. And the Shaw Place developers are aware of this fence and, happy with it and perhaps contributing to it.
So with the fence design, since that is going to be probably the biggest discussion item here, you're telling us, Kate, that the Oxford Design Guidelines ask to avoid, or do they say you cannot? Is it strictly the verbiage, is it avoid fence designs of mixed construction materials like stated here?
Yeah, that's a direct quote from the guidelines. So
Okay.
avoid fence designs that mix construction material unless documented by physical evidence or historic photographs or drawings. There is current fencing on the Shaw Place property that does mix metal and brick, but I believe, and Ben can correct me if I'm wrong, that was part of a Mayor and Board of Aldermen decision when the case was overturned. So, but it does say avoid, it doesn't say do not use forever and ever.
And we use them only occasionally. Along that entire south side, which is 350 feet, there are only 11 houses. So they're spaced out.
Well, Jonathan, do you feel that instead of using the brick, that you could use wood that would be posts that would make it still look the way that you would like it to without brick?
Well, I think it's hard to use wood as an additional defining element when in between each of these brick piers there are a number of brick posts, because as you know, they're spaced out 30 to 40 feet apart. Well, no, I'm sorry about that. Probably 28 to 30 feet apart. So I don't know. We couldn't use a bigger wood post, for instance, or anything like that to break it up. So wood doesn't really lend itself to achieving the same thing that a brick pier on occasion does.
Does anyone have any discussion on what we could do to help this fence situation? Lance, what about you?
Yes. Hello?
Yes?
I thought I heard my name.
Is there anything you would like to say about the fence?
No, not this time.
So has everyone read the insert that Kate gave us in the material on fencing from the guidelines?
Yeah, I personally, I think it says it should be avoided, and I certainly understand that. He's saying they're 28, 30 feet apart. There's 300 feet of it. In practical considerations, I don't have a problem with it, just personally. And that wouldn't be necessarily the case in a very small setting. You know, there are certainly plenty of instances. Most of the time, you certainly want to keep those the same, I believe. In this case, I'm not really swayed either way.
It's certainly a much bigger lot and a much larger amount of fencing than we're normally considering in the historic neighborhoods. So, and it's also less visible. So.
You're right. You can't see it anyway. It's almost so.
Camp, do you have anything to say?
I don't object to the use of the brick because of the issues that the others have brought, that it's really not going to be seen that much and probably is needed in that long stretch that you've got there. So I don't have any objection to it.
Jolie? Did she get off? So if there's no...
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. No, I have no objection.
I beg your pardon?
I have no objection.
Okay. All right, then let's discuss the carport, which to me kind of is pretty simple. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about the carport? All right. What else are we supposed to rule on, Jonathan? Help me here.
The pool and its concrete decking is another component.
I don't see anything on the pool.
New carport pool decking.
Yeah.
And what is that coping and decking, Jonathan? Forgive me if I've missed that somehow.
It's concrete.
Okay.
All right, so I'm assuming that no one has anything that they are opposed to or would like to add to the COA that's being presented to us. It seems like the fence problem, which I thought would be the main problem, is really not. So if there's no other discussion on the matter, I'll entertain a motion. And there's nobody here.
Actually, Diane, before you do that, Jonathan just texted me, and the applicant is proposing, it's on the site plan, the applicant is proposing a gate at their existing drive. I'm sorry I didn't point that out. We didn't have a design for it before I wrote the staff reports. They will need a special exception from the Planning Commission to install a gate, which they have not yet proposed. But I'm gonna share my screen. Thanks for reminding me, Jonathan, if you can hear me.
It's a very simple gate, and we're enclosing the entire property so as we don't have to subdivide the property so the pool is enclosed. And so it'd be a very simple metal gate between two brick piers like we have in our wood fence. It's not as big as this gate, obviously, but I think this gate was really meant to just illustrate that it's a very simple, not very ornate design that we would be looking to,
Michael, can you
to
guys
have
make it
it.
so they're seeing my screen when it's shared?
Kate, did you say that the gate would have to go before the planning board?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a drawing on this gate, or
Huh?
is it just a simple?
Yeah, it's just a simple arch. We're working on getting
Yeah.
Diane, to answer your question, yes, gates on single-family residences require a special exception. And there's a whole host of criteria that are typically required. So they'll have to comply with all of that. The applicant is aware of that. Just take the projector off.
It won't do anything
Okay.
good, 'cause
Okay.
that system's completely separate.
It's okay. It's because Microsoft Teams is down from the desktop standpoint.
So if the planning board rules on the gate, it doesn't come back to us then? So this
think-
would,
I think that's why we wanted to go ahead and stress the design of it, so that was taken care of.
so we're to rule on the design of it, whether it passes the planning board or not? Is that correct? Okay.
So we received a photo of the gate this morning. I'm happy to pass it around for the commissioners that are here.
I'm seeing it on my screen. Is it somehow not making it done?
Great. Okay, I'm gonna show the commissioners here then. Yeah, we're having a problem with this screen sharing here in the room.
It's like making,
Just a comment, would it be possible to, and is this what you're maybe already planning, Jonathan, but that the brick columns would be consistent with the other brick columns that are interspersed in the wooden fence?
That's right, that's right.
Okay.
And the location of this gate, I think you should, notice on the site plan, it's not at the street. It's a good distance back off of the street.
And to be fair, there is an existing gate there right now.
It's true.
It's a cattle gate.
It's a cattle gate.
That's right. It's a gate.
You say potato, I say potato.
To be fair.
okay, so we are to vote on the swimming pool, the carport, the fence, and the design of the gate.
Yes.
Okay,
And staff has no issue with the gate. If you already said this, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The design.
the design, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
all right, so, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved as stated.
Second.
no discussion. Anybody want to say anything else while we're at it? Okay, everyone in favor?
Yeah, we second.
It's a second.
Yeah.
There's no one here. We'll restate that. Okay. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Anyone abstaining? The motion passes.
Hey, Diane,
Yes,
before we move on, while that's still up on the screen,
yes.
I have a question about the existing residence. Is it a contributing? Do we know if it's contributing to the historic district?
It's not. It is not.
Okay.
It's like a 1980s ranch.
I think it's older than 80s. No?
According to the survey, it 1980, it was like 1981, 1982.
It doesn't look old on the inside either. Clearly, the outside looks new. It might have been renovated, but even on the inside, it doesn't seem old.
My guess is that it dates to the late 60s. The reason I'm asking is, and this would be something that we might want to consider, in order to provide some added protection to some of these 60s, 70s ranch houses, can we get them designated as contributing? Or is that a whole thing that has to be done district-wide, or can we suggest certain ones that might now be contributing because they are of age now?
As Kate mentioned earlier, we're in the process right now of updating all of our surveys with our CLG grant. We're not yet at the point where we've received the actual surveys and going through the process of adopting all of the surveys and to begin using them. So there's a potential that what you're asking may end up happening on some of these ranches or all of the ranches.
Okay, good. That's good news.
But Camp, it also depends on it depends on, too, the period of significance for the historic district, and that's kind of determined by MDAH. So, like, let's say, I'm not sure that every ranch is going to be brought up to contributing status. It might depend on what historic district it's in.
Sure, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Can I make one comment?
Hey, can I jump in? This is Richard Cross.
Hey, Richard.
Hey, Camp, I think at the January meeting, you expressed some concerns about us trying to maybe freshen this up and make the existing residents look a little bit better. Yeah. That is very much in our plans. We wanted to make sure that we were kind of set moving forward with this. My sweet wife, Jane, is on a weekly basis at least suggesting that there's some things that we need to do that will make it a little more livable until we make the move. So we've got that on the agenda, and not to create any controversy, but one of those things may be requesting the opportunity to paint the brick, staying along with the theme of the evening. But we do have some stuff that we're going to get to on that, and obviously we'll be circling back with you guys to go through that process.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that.
So I just have one point of information that I wanted to provide to the commission. We're in the process of reviewing a complaint from a local resident regarding a structure. It's an accessory structure, not a primary structure, on North 14th Street, where there's it's basically a request for demolition by neglect. So we've received a letter, and we're in the early process of evaluating it's an accessory structure. It's an outbuilding. It's not the principal structure. It's an outbuilding, and so we're in the early process right now of evaluating whether or not that structure actually complies or meets the ordinance for demolition by neglect. I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that, because there's a potential that would come forward to this commission for consideration. There is a process. It's a lengthier process, but there is a process where it would come back before this commission for consideration the owner of the property. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, that we're starting that process, and you know, hopefully or not, we'll come before you or not.
Yeah.
I just told Jacob to brush up on the regs.
That would be great.
Okay, does anybody have anything they'd like to add to this meeting? And if not, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Everyone in favor? Anyone opposed? Adjourned.